strong.
Chapter 61. You are not a man. The news that the disciples of Wakir Yifushan Palace ruthlessly abused Jingyang, the greedy wolf palace, spread throughout Donghai Zugong the next day, and many people heard that the two men sighed during the battle. The Jingyang disciple who trained in Greed Wolf Palace wanted to get his face back for Greed Wolf Palace, but was ruthlessly tortured by Yifushan, and didn't even have the chance to fight back. But such Jingyang had become a joke. This time, it is really a shame, not only Jingyang, but also the Greedy Wolf Palace. Now walking in the Donghai Zugong Palace, everyone in the Greedy Wolf Palace felt that someone was pointing at them and was extremely shameless. That is why they have always wanted to deal with Yifushan's face, but now it seems difficult. It is possible, Yifushan, that there are several demons. Not only Greed Wolf Palace thought so, many people in Donghai Zugong realized that this Yifushan was like a mixed world demon lord. In Zivai Palace, in the courtyard where Wajiayu is located, Shu Yuyan is here, chatting with Wajiayu about this interesting matter. Wajiayu smiled and asked, "So, it is the people from the Greedy Wolf Palace who sent them on their own initiative?" Well, it is said that Yifushan is not interested. The people in the Greedy Wolf Palace blocked the way and insulted. Yifushan stopped waiting for Jingyang. After Jingyang arrived, his first sentence turned out, "Are you ready to be harassed?" You said ready. Is this person crazy? Shu Yuyan giggled. Yanua Jiyu's beautiful eyes showed a stunning smile, and said, "Well, it's too bad." Seeing Hua Yuyu's smile, Shu Yuyan felt suspicious. Previously, Hua Jiyu was not very interested in these things, but then came from her first talk about Yifushan. Hua Jiyu seemed to be interested. Even Jingyang and Yifushan heard the conversation with great interest. Last time you said that the person you like is a bad person. Why are you so interested in this Yifushan now? You won't, you have to empathize and not love. Shu Yunmei looked at Hua Jiyu. Hua Jiyu looked for a moment, then said, "What are you talking about? Just think of this person as funny. It's almost the same. I thought you fell in love so quickly, and the guy you like is very sad." Shu Yuyan muttered, "Yes, I heard the teacher say, painting holy disciple Zhou Mu wants to come to our Zivai Palace to practice and will come directly there. Zhou Mu is said to be a genius summoner." Oh, Hua Jiyu responded casually. When Shu Yuyan saw her expression, she knew that she was not interested, and couldn't help but smile. "It seems that you are not interested in painting the holy disciple at all. I wonder if you want. What is it? How bad is it? You'll find out later." Hua Jiyu smiled sweetly, making Shu Yuyan look a little crazy. It seemed that her poisoning was deep. In Wakir Palace, Yiqingshuan came to where Yifushan and the rest of his life lived. When Yifushan saw Yiqingshuan, he smiled and said, "Should I avoid him?" "What are you talking about?" Yiqingshuan Mai's eyes were slightly embarrassed. She glanced at the rest of her life, and then said to Yifushan, "You hit Jingyang yesterday. He owes it to himself." Yifushan shrugged, and the Greedy Wolf Palace pulled him to fight, but he had no choice but to finish. Jingyang is training above the Greed Wolf Palace, and news of your tyrannical abuse has spread in Zugong. This time, you offended the Greed Wolf Palace a little harshly, Yiqingshuan said weakly. Yifushan was a bit depressed. Before he was too lazy to care about Jingyang. In addition to not having any interest in abusing Jingyang, he was afraid of trouble, but the Greedy Wolf Palace took the initiative to ask for abuse, and this account still had to be reckoned with to him. It would be better if Donghai Zugong was a whole, but he already knew that the relationship between the 7 houses of Donghai Zugong was complicated. Each house was self-sufficient, and he would torture the Wolf Palace so badly that it was hard to remember. Seeing Yifushan's depressed expression, Yiqingshuan smiled and said, "I'll take you there." Bian Yifushan blinked and pointed at the palace above Wakir Palace, where? "Well, you probably still want to test your strength, don't you?" Yiqingshuan nodded. "Okay." Yifushan's face showed a bright smile, and he patted the shoulder for the rest of his life, saying, "The rest of your life, thank you. Why did you get involved with me again? Isn't that what you hit?" The rest of his life seemed empty. "You don't understand," Yifushan said gracefully. "You go first, I'll follow." Yifushan smiled and pushed the rest of his life forward. The rest of his life gave him a gloomy look, then he lifted his leg and walked forward. Yiqingshuan followed in the footsteps of the rest of his life and whispered, "Why are you two so good and how do you train?" "I don't know." The rest of his life shook his head. "The last time I saw you fight, I used the power of metallic aura. It should be a mage talent, but there is no spell. Instead, I fought purely through martial arts. I don't know how you have such strong power." Yiqingshuan praised. "Aren't they handsome?" Yifushan didn't know when he appeared behind him, interrupting. Yiqingshuan turned her head, Mei glanced at her, and Yifushan trembled and smiled. "Come on, please don't listen." Yiqingshuan leaned his head and still chatted with the rest of his life. Yifushan did not step forward and followed quickly. For the rest of her life, Yu Qingshuan was strong and strong, Yu Qingshuan was gentle and beautiful, and she was very kind. The structure above the Wu Palace was more elegant, giving Yi Fuxian the feeling that it was not like a learning palace, but more like the place of the ancestral gate. Many people would greet Yu Qingshuan when they saw her, and she was quite polite, and at the same time curious about the rest of her and Yi Fuxian's life. Yu Qingshuan brought the two teenagers and didn't know their identity. Yi Fuxian had been observing from behind. He saw several teenagers looking at Yu Qingshuan and Yu Sheng flashing jealous expressions in the eyes chatting in front of them. They couldn't help but think about it. Looks like the rest of their lives are rivals. Yu Qingshuan finally brought Yu Fuxian and the rest of his life to the Great Hall. There are many people here. 2 old men stood at the front, and the rest had 8 teenagers. Yu Qingshuan walked away from the rest of his life and came to the 2 elders. Yi Fuxian glanced at Yu Qingshuan, wondering what the girl was. This scene in front of him was clearly prepared for them. Hearing Qingshuan that you two are very strong, so you were called to train in Wuke Palace a while ago, but these are rumors. We want to see for ourselves. The people here are all talented disciples of Wuke Palace. All are in the realm of 4-star glory. You can choose people to fight and see if your combat strength is as strong as King Xuan said. One of the old men said. Yu Fuxian just realized that they were called into the military. Yu Gong was actually for Yu Qingshuan's sake. No wonder, although the last time I made a big noise in Takai Zugong. After all, the characters above the 7th palace did not pay much attention to the battle under Zugong, but it is not surprising that someone recommended it. Is it within the 4-star glory realm? Yi Fuxian smiled and said, no need to bother, go together, you are offended. He knew that at this time, it was not the time to be humble, not to show a bit of strength, and on what basis did he get the attention of the officials of the Wuke Palace? You are as arrogant as rumored, said a boy with a smile. I heard that you beat Jing Yang in boxing yesterday. I want to know how strong you are. Don't let us down. Another young girl wearing a striker's back sword smiled. Opening, you'll find out soon enough. Yi Fuxian laughed. Yi Fuxian, the rest of your life, please advise. In that case, let's go together. The old man standing at the front said, his voice lowered, and 8 talented teenagers stood up and surrounded them, 4 of them facing the front and 4 of them standing on the spot. Meanwhile, Reiki flows wildly. The vines rolled towards Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life instantly. It was a wooden spell. Yi Fuxian's aura raged around his body. Golden wings appeared and vibrated and shattered the vines that were rolled up on him. The rest of his life stood in place. Let the vines bind his body. Oh! Flames erupted, igniting the vine, and his entire body seemed to be on fire. However, a dark golden armor appeared on his body, still standing still, and Yi Fuxian's body was surrounded by golden protection. Armor. The 2 of them were gone for the rest of their lives, and they ran into Yi Fuxian. Boom! With a loud bang, the vines in the rest of his life exploded directly. His footsteps slammed forward, the ground trembled, 2 fists with a fierce wind pounded back and forth, accompanied by a loud sound, knocking on the chest and back of the rest of their lives, but they felt a little clenched fist. In the next moment, the rest of his life reached out and clasped their hands together then they were thrown into the air, and then the 2 of them instantly flew into the distance. At the same time, Yi Fuxian's side, the girl attacked with a sword, and the other was a ghost, encircling Yi Fuxian's body like a shadow. Yi Fuxian stood on the spot, and suddenly his wings trembled. His body moved, and he punched. A residual image was sent forward, and he shattered and flew out, but his body did not stop, like lightning. Dodging the girl's sword, he flew past her, slamming the girl to the ground, her face facing the ground. Just one face to face, the 4 lying down. The other 4 mages are they still humans? Do you want to continue? Yi Fuxian smiled. It doesn't matter. The 2 old men twitched. They were all disciples under their door. They always thought that their talent was good, but today, it was like they couldn't stand the sight. They had been beaten before they played their true strength. Already. Go. The 2 old men turned around and were depressed. When I saw the old man leave, the teenagers felt a little embarrassed, and they both flew back with swollen noses and faces. After glancing at the rest of their lives, they turned around and said, this fellow is perverted. That's too much of a bluff. Another young man was also depressed, but he was thrown into the air for the first time in his life. The girl holding the wolf sword rose from the ground, staring at the dust, standing in front of Yi Fuxian, looking at him. You are not a man. I said, I was very wronged, and the young girl was slim and beautiful. He is very talented. Even before the battle was not won, everyone would pity it. How could it be? Yi Fuxian stood there with an innocent face. Yu Qingshuan in front of him smiled. These 2 people are too much. Chapter 62. For the rest of my life. Yu Qingshuan looked at him. It was surprising that they were able to enter the military. The practice of Yu Gong was done because the daughter of Master Wu Yu Gong happened to see them fighting that day. Now, Yu Qingshuan introduced him and the rest of his life to his father's master, Wu Yu Gong. My father always wanted to find a martial arts genius to inherit his mantle, but he couldn't find one, so I saw you that day and told my father. Yi Qingshuan whispered softly. Xi Yi Fuxian smiled and nodded. For the rest of my life, what am I still doing? Worshipping the teacher. The Master Lord of the Wakir Palace, one of the 7 palaces of Tokai Academy, should be considered one of the 7 most powerful people in Tokai Academy. Yu Sheng nodded his head, bowed to Palace Master Wakir, and said, I have seen that teacher all my life. Okay. The majestic eyes of the Lord of the Wakir Palace also smiled, and said, follow me to train in the future. He said, his eyes fell on Yi Fuxian again and asked, are you majoring in martial arts or magicians? There is nothing primary and secondary, Yi Fuxian replied with a smile. My students especially want to inherit my martial arts. Do you want to train with me? Wakir Gonong asked. There is already a teacher in middle school, Qin Mo. I don't know if the palace lord knows. Yi Fuxian said. The Wakir Palace master's eyes flashed, and he looked at Yi Fuxian in surprise. Are you a flower disciple? Yes. Yi Fuxian nodded his head. It seemed that his teacher was originally quite famous, and the master of the Wakir Palace knew him. How is he now? Where is that person? Wakir Gonong asked. Teacher's spirit is very damaged, and his activities are uncomfortable. He is cultivating in the piano garden, Yi Fuxian said. So you have also arrived at Qin Garden. How is Tang Lan now? Wakir Gonong asked again. Yi Fuxian was stunned. How do you feel that Gongzhu and Aunt Tang have a relationship? Aunt Tang is very kind, taking care of the teacher in the piano garden. Yi Fuxian responded. I know he still can't let go. I have persuaded him to stay away from flowers, and his style is too arrogant, his temper is bad, and he changes his mind, and he doesn't know where he likes flowers. The palace master suddenly became angry. Yi Fuxian stood stunned. How did he feel that the palace master was full of hatred for the teacher? Is there no enmity? Gongzhu, what is the relationship between you and Aunt Tang? And it seems that I have misunderstood my teacher. Yi Fuxian asked weakly. Misunderstanding. Tang Lan is my student, but she broke up with me because of a romantic relationship. Do you think I misunderstood her? Wuquang Palace looked at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian looks black. This. Forget it, let alone what happened that year. Over the years, that girl was very stingy, and she completely forgot to be my teacher. Next time you come back and tell her that I've forgotten things before. Now, I have the opportunity to let him come and see me. Wu Qiu Gong Gong said. Yi Fuxian nodded, and said, Gong Gong, I can see that Aunt Tang is very affectionate. Since you are her teacher, your Aunt Tang should be worried about you. He didn't come to see your parents because he felt guilty. I know that girl has a lot of affection, otherwise how would she take care of the flowers? Wakir Gong Palace sighed, and then glanced at Yi Fuxian, and said, your brat's mouth is so strong and looks like this. Flowers are romantic, and truly have their teachers and followers. Yi Fuxian stood there innocently, thinking to himself, Master, you have been pitted this time. King Xuan, I will have less contact with this brat and more with the rest of my life. Wu Qiu Gong Gong said again. Yi Fuxian was amused, and laughed. Gong Gong is right. Well, you can come with me. The master of Wakir Palace did not say anything, turned and walked in one direction. Yi Qingshuan followed, and the rest of his life and Yi Fuxian followed, and saw Yi Qingshuan looking back at Yi Fuxian and blinking his eyes for the rest of his life, seems to be a little arrogant. The main name of Wuquang Palace is Yi Xiang. He took Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life into the courtyard. The page is very blank. There are only pavilions and ancient trees, and it feels a bit sad. How much do you know about the East China Sea Academy? Yi Xiang sat in front of the ancient tree, and Yi Fuxian and the rest of their lives also sat on the ground. I only know that Donghai Zugong is divided into 7 palaces, and each palace is actually its own faction, similar to the sectarian army, which is responsible for Donghai Zugong together, Yi Fuxian said. You are right. The predecessor of the 7 palaces of the Tokai Academy is actually the top army in the East China Sea. After more than 300 years ago, Emperor Yi Qing and Emperor Donghuang wanted to prosper the martial arts and ordered the princes of the world to create Wufu Academy. But this vast, Tokai Academy will become a place of orthodox practice in the future, and the facts have proven this. Therefore, the main forces of Donghai City do not want to lose, and they jointly control Tokai Academy, that is, the original form of the palace Tokai was later changed to the current 7 palaces. Xiang Yi slowly spoke, and spoke to them about the background of Tokai Academy. Now the 7th palace of the Donghai Learning Academy each has its own style. These facts are determined by the sectarian power of the year. For example, Zibai Palace, the most important person among them is a spiritual master, who has cultivated many powerful spirits. Master, like a master of painting, your teacher, Qin Mo, once practiced there. Today's Zibai Palace can be said to be the most powerful of the 7 palaces of the Tokai Academy. Except for Zibai Palace, it is considered the Tianfu Palace. Where is our Wakir Palace? Yi Fuxian asked. Budo is weak. Yi Xiang looked at Yi Fuxian and said, now in the land of Shungzhou, many people think that mages are better than martial arts practitioners, and they are more willing to take the mage route. Even if they have both talents, almost everyone will choose major in the mage, but in fact, to a certain degree, the explosive power of the martial arts practitioner is not weaker than the mage, or even stronger, but even so, my martial arts palace had shown signs of decline, but above this martial arts palace it was still rare to find someone with such outstanding martial arts talent. Fortunately, the rest of his life had appeared. In his hands, the people of Tokai Academy will once again see the power of martial arts. I always thought that there was no clear distinction between strengths and weaknesses. Yi Fuxian said, righteous father has said before, don't underestimate professional practitioners, the strong is stronger. Yi Xiang nodded and said, of course, for the rest of my life, don't give up spiritual practice, otherwise, even if your fighting ability is strong, once you face a powerful spiritual master in Zibai Palace, there is no room for play at all. I know. For the rest of his life, many types of spiritual masters were enemies of pure martial practitioners. For the rest of your life, your explosive strength and power is very strong, but the speed will be handicapped. This courtyard is the place where I used to train. The room, apart from being a residence, also has a collection of books, and several places for practice. Stay here. To practice. Yi Xiangdao. Okay. Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life nodded. Familiar with you, King Xuan, let's go. Yi Xiang said and took Yi Qingshuan away. Yi Qingshuan didn't forget to come back and raised a small fist to push him away. After the two left, Yi Fuxian patted the shoulder for the rest of his life and said, for life, the teacher can be a father-in-law. He gave her a silent look at the rest of her life, and said, are you talking about the experience? This time it was Yi Fuxian's turn to be dumbfounded, and then said, successful experience. He said, walking towards a room in the courtyard proudly, but after a short shout, Yi Fuxian flew out of his body, looking very embarrassed, while cursing, what a ghost place. The rest of his life was accepted as a personal disciple by the master of the Wakir Palace, which was undoubtedly heavy news for Tokai Academy. It was said that the master of the Wakir Palace had not accepted disciples for many years, so it had to be for the rest of his life. Talent is very satisfied. Yi Fuxian also went to the peak of Wakir Palace to train. Two people who have just set foot in Tokai Academy after a short time sparked a storm in the academy, and thus became one of the most dazzling students at Tokai Academy, attracting the attention of the entire Tokai Academy. Another interesting news is that Zhou Mu, a holy disciple of painting, also entered the practice at Tokai Academy, and went straight to the top of Zibai Palace. For a time, it has also become the focus of discussion of Tokai Academy disciples. Many people compared Yi Fuxian, the rest of his life, and Zhou Mu. Although Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life are extraordinary, after all, his background is worse. Unlike the painting master, many people think that Zhou Mu is more extraordinary. Then, there was news from Donghai Zugong. Yi Fuxian, he was a disciple of Demon Keen, and Keen Demon who had lost his soul with the painting artist at that time. And not long ago, at the time of King Luo's birthday party, Yi Fuxian ran into the royal palace and defeated many geniuses. In the end, Zhou Mu took a shot and repulsed Yi Fuxian and didn't dare to fight anymore. Leave the palace. Chapter 63, Playoff. News of Zhou Mu's defeat to Yi Fuxian spread throughout the East China Sea Academy. Many of the disciples in Wakir Palace were extremely unhappy. Now Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life followed the main practice of the palace, while Zhou Mu entered the Zibai Palace. Comparing the two, it seems that Wakir Palace seems to be inferior to Zibai Palace. But Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life don't know this, and today they have been practicing in the courtyard. At this moment, there was another loud sound. Yi Fuxian flew out of the training room. The wings behind him fluttered and swirled in the air. Even though they were a little embarrassed, they still stabilized and landed on the ground. Now I last a little longer now. A voice came. Yi Fuxian turned his eyes and saw the rest of his life and Yi Qingshuan talking under the ancient tree. Have you ever thought about how I feel like this? Yi Fuxian looked at the two of them. He looked at Yi Fuxian for the rest of his life, then shook his head seriously. No. Revenge. Yi Fuxian stared at the rest of his life, then walked towards the ancient tree and asked Yi Qingshuan, Qingshuan, who carved the law there, my body has improved greatly in recent times, but the formation of the law of attack is faster and stronger. I do not know. Yi Qingshuan shook her head. This law formation is for controlling martial arts. The stronger your strength and the more motivating your aura, the stronger the law formation will be, as long as you insist. Time is getting longer and longer, that is, progress. I'm faster than the rest of my life. How can he outlast me? Yi Fuxian said depressed. For the rest of his life, he has strong strength. You rely more on body skills, and the gravity of the magic circle will have a greater effect on you. Yi Qingshuan explained. Yi Fuxian nodded. Wait for the rest of my life to practice in this magic circle for some time. You can flexibly dodge attacks under gravity, and it will become even more terrifying after that. These days he practiced cultivation. In fact, his strength was not weak at all. Yi Qingdai had taught him a refining technique and could turn his body into a monster level. This place is also very suitable for its purification. Also, there is a library in the yard, with a lot of combat skills you can practice. Yi Qingdai's refining method, Shenlong refining the body, Shenpeng ape refining power, and Shenpeng bone refining speed. This is when Yi Qing embodied the beast, he understood himself from the monster, and his attack moves were all from the monster. I realized that with the power of Emperor Yi Qing, he could definitely exert his shocking power like the golden-winged true god dragon Dapping, but he was still weak and could only have a limited understanding. At this time, he can practice some powerful martial arts combat skills. Yes, there are rumors that are not good for you outside. Yi Qingshuan looked at Yi Fuxian and said. What rumors? Yi Fuxian asked. Now that Zhou Mu has been training in Zibai Palace, and then there was a rumor in the East China Sea Academy that you are very arrogant in King Luo Palace, but you lost to Zhou Mu. Yi Qingshuan said cautiously, and seemed to be looking at Yi Fuxian with concern. At first glance, if true, would it hurt his pride? Yi Fuxian felt a little strange for a while, and said, Zhou Mu himself said. Looks like it was news from some students at Takai Academy. Yi Qingshuan whispered softly. Yi Fuxian shrugged and said with a smile, it seems that someone is annoyed with me. Is not that true? Yi Qingshuan's eyes brightened slightly. Zhou Mu is a 5-star glory world. Although Yi Fuxian is very strong, but after all, his realm is low, so when he heard the rumors, he did not dare to say for sure it was fake. Zhou Mu can't do it. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Qingshuan and said, did anyone use this to draw the story of the painting master's victory over my teacher? Yi Qingshuan smiled when she heard Yi Fuxian's confident words, said, yes, there are several of these voices. It is estimated that many of them were triggered by the greedy wolf palace. They deliberately put you down, and some people questioned my father's acceptance. Do you want to clarify? Let the people of Donghai Zugong know that this is a rumor, so that others will not misunderstand you. Since some people want to believe, did you clarify that others believe you? Yi Fuxian laughed. You can never stop other people's mouths. Just let them go, and one day they will shut up. You are free and easy, but since you are so confident and you defeated Zhou Mu in the future, those who slander you will naturally be embarrassed. Yi Qingshuan smiled. Compared to this, I care more about where your relationship has developed. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Qingshuan with a smile, only to see Yi Qingshuan's face fluttering with red light, looking at Yi Fuxian with a look, nonsense, I'm leaving. He said, while looking at the rest of his life. Yi Qingshuan ran away. For the rest of my life, take the initiative. Yi Fuxian smiled. I'm practicing. The rest of my life walking towards the practice room. Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life were immersed in practice. Yi Qingshuan often came to visit them. Occasionally, Yi Xiang would also come to guide the rest of his training. As for Yi Fuxian, he was ignored and the difference was very clear. Like the rest of his life, Yi Fuxian was injured. Today, Yi Qingshuan came to find him again. Fuxian, for the rest of my life, my father asked you to follow me on his journey, Yi Qingshuan began. Okay, what's wrong? Yi Fuxian asked. Someone from Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace came to visit and said that it was a congratulation to my father for accepting disciples. Yi Qingshuan said, according to manners, you should go and have a look. The two nodded and left Yi Qingshuan together. The three of them came to the hospitality place of Wakur Palace, and saw that there were two figures facing each other. Both of them were extraordinary. They were the people of Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace. Behind the two, there were two silhouettes. Maybe they're students. Yi Fuxian, a visitor to Zibai Palace, had seen the old man he saw in the Luo mansion that day. Younger Yi Fuxian has seen two seniors. Yi Fuxian saluted in heaven. Well, we meet again. The old man looked at Yi Fuxian with a smile. I didn't expect that after entering the palace of King Luo, you would worship under the main gate of Yigong, and it was really young. Thank you, senior. Yi Fuxian said. Your master is training in my Zibai Palace. How are you going to come to Wakur Palace? Do you want to try it with a Gong master? The old man smiled. Senior laughed. Yi Fuxian smiled bitterly. Ha ha. The old man smiled and said, Jiu is now training in Zibai Palace. Since you two know each other, you can go to my Zibai Palace to see the girl in Jiu. Yi Fuxian's expression was stunned, because the other party knew that he was Keen Demon's disciple. The relationship between the two could not be hidden, and he admitted generously, I wanted to go see him earlier, but he was training in Zibai Palace, so I didn't dare to disturb him. Now, when seniors speak, they have a chance to see them. I hope seniors are not strange. Okay. The old man glared at Yi Fuxian. Well, you juniors, let's talk. We have something to talk to the owner of Yigong. The old man said with a smile, and the people behind him and Yi Fuxian stepped back and left here. Shu Shuyun's beautiful eyes continued to stare at Yi Fuxian. When the old man asked him to leave, he caught up with Yi Fuxian and shouted, Wait. Is there something wrong? Yi Fuxian smiled and looked at Shu Yuyan. My name is Shu Yuyan, and I am a good friend of XEU. Shu Yuyan looked at Yi Fuxian and said that she felt like she knew a secret. Hua Jiu once told someone she liked, but Yi Fuxian hadn't come to the East China Sea Academy at that time, and Hua Jiu probably hadn't thought about it. A few days later, Yi Fuxian appeared. Then, Hua Ziyu seemed to be very interested in Yi Fuxian. Before, he didn't really care. After Zhou Mu entered Zibai Palace, he knew that Hua Ziyu was originally Qin Mo Hua's daughter. Fu Tianai is a disciple of Demon Qin. The two of them clearly knew each other before. When you associate these together, Shu Yuyan can easily guess something. The handsome young man in front of me, the man who ignited the storm surge shortly after entering the palace, must be the one who has thought of Wajiayu. My name is Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian smiled and said, is he okay with interpretation? Shu Yuyan nodded. She was curious about Yi Fuxian, who is a man like Hua Jiu. At this time, he has a lot to say, but there are other things on the side, which are not very comfortable. He can see that neither Wajiayu nor Yi Fuxian wants to reveal their relationship. Is Brother Yi very familiar with the language of reconciliation? At this time, the youth beside Shu Yuyan asked with a smile. XEU is my teacher's daughter, and naturally she is familiar. Yi Fuxian glanced at each other. At the age of 18, a pair of sword brows looked heroic. Is that so? The young man smiled and said, I trained with XEU at Zibai Palace ~. I often chatted with him, but I've never heard him mention it. In the future, Brother Yi has the opportunity to come to me. Palace, find me. Listen to Brother Mu's tone. Will this embrace the beauty? A youth in Tianfu Palace smiled. A woman like XEU, how can it be so easy? It takes time, but. Mu Yongxuan smiled and said, not to mention. Yi Fuxian frowned slightly, and Mu Yongxuan glanced his whole life. Yes, Brother Yi, I heard that you have collided with Priest Zhou in King Luo Palace. Currently, it is known to everyone in the East China Sea Academy. Don't worry too much about it. Learn about defeat. It's not a big deal. Speak, nothing will happen, Mu Yongxuan continued. Okay, I will have a chat with Zhou Mu when I have the chance. Yi Fuxian smiled. In that case, we will not interfere. Brother Yi, you go, we are here to wait. Mu Yongxuan said. Okay. Yi Fuxian was not polite, and they went here directly with the rest of his life. Mu Yongxuan looked at Yi Fuxian's back, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Brother Mu, what do you mean by this? Shu Yuyan asked Mu Yongxuan. She naturally knew that Mu Yongxuan was lying. If Yi Fuxian and Hua Ziyu don't have that level of relationship, that's fine. If that's the case, Mu Yongxuan's words are undoubtedly a provocation. Yu Yan, what do you mean after chasing Yi Fuxian, Mo Fei, XEU called you with him? Mu Yongxuan asked him. Since he knows the language of reconciliation, I just say hello and have no other intentions. Shu Yuyan said. Is that so? Mu Yongxuan smiled, then lifted her leg and left. Chapter 64, Gossip. Yi Fuxian walked towards the courtyard where he lived, his brows always frowning. King Xuan, who is he? Yi Fuxian asked Yi Qingshuan. Mu Yongxuan, a disciple of Zibai Palace, has excellent talent. Now he should be in the 8 stars spiritual realm, majoring in spirituality. Yi Qingshuan said, he is a little strange, why would Mu Yongxuan treat you? Fu Qian said those words. Mu Yongxuan. Yi Fuxian repeated in a low voice, writing down his name. Yu Yusheng looked at Yi Fuxian's frown, glanced at Yi Qingshuan, and then at Yi Fuxian. Zunzi is not that type of person. Of course I know that fairies are not that type of person. Yi Fuxian nodded, but don't you think this Mu Yongxuan is weird? Why are you saying this on purpose? It's strange, indeed. The rest of his life nodded. It's like trying to test me, what does he know? Yi Fuxian said to himself. Brother-in-law, fairy. Yi Qingshuan's eyes flickered, slightly stunned, as if they were talking about Waji. Qingshuan, it's a secret, don't tell others. The rest of his life told Yi Qingshuan that after spending so long with him, the rest of his life obviously treated Yi Qingshuan as his own, and he would only say this in front of him. Hua Jiu is my boyfriend. Yi Fuxian said to Yi Qingshuan. Yi Qingshuan blinked, and asked suspiciously, really? I don't really trust me. Yi Fuxian saw Yi Qingshuan's expression slightly depressed. An extraordinary person like me must naturally match the first beauty Donghai Zugong. Yi Qingshuan looked at Yi Fuxian, groaned for a moment, and then asked the rest of his life, is he so narcissistic? Yes. The rest of his life nodded solemnly. It's over. Yi Fuxian heard the conversation between the two, and said, women sing together, have no brothers. Quote. Yi Qingshuan and the rest of her life were dumbfounded. Whether it is a temptation or not, I remember Mu Yongxuan. Yi Fuxian thought of Mu Yongxuan's words only a bright smile. The rest of his life saw her smile and knew that one would be miserable in the future. As soon as the 3 men returned to the courtyard, Yi Xiang followed, and his eyes fell on Yi Fuxian, and he said, follow me. Yi Fuxian took a moment, then nodded, and followed Yi Xiang to the old tree. You went to the matter of Luo Luofu? Yi Xiang asked. It was something before Shankakur Palace. After I came back, I met King Xuan. Yi Fuxian said, and I will not make trouble. Want to ask Master Luo to heal your teacher? Yi Xiangdao. Yi Fuxian nodded. Recklessly, do you know what you're doing? Yi Xiang said coldly, fortunately, you are just a small person. Given his face, those people are not good at dealing with you head-on, otherwise you think someone will take care of you, Z people from Wei Palace. Do you know what the relationship between Z Wei Palace and Huo Sheng and Master Luo is? Yi Fuxian looked for a moment, looked at Yi Xiang with some doubts, and said, I also realized that the painting master also practiced in Zibai Palace before meeting the palace master. It is really a disciple who was handed over by the flower wind, the same self-righteousness. Yi Xiang looked very annoyed, said, do you know why your master was deposed and deported from Donghai City? I only know that his master lost to Huo Sheng. Neither Huo Sheng nor the Nandu family would allow him to stay in Donghai City, Yi Fuxian said. Even if he wins the painting of the sage, how can he stay? From his pursuit of the Nandu family, tragedy has been shattered. Yi Xiang said lightly, in that year, whether it was Zibai Palace or the Nandu family, they all agreed on one thing, that is, Qiandu and Huosheng of the Nandu family are a natural couple. This is a marriage that everyone is happy to see. Your teacher is kind. Right yourself, who is he? He looks good. I said that he was still staring at Yi Fuxian's face. Yi Fuxian was a little depressed. You should grieve the teacher. What do you see from me? What's even more confusing is that he actually makes raw rice to cook adult rice, and it is already fatal to die in Donghai City. Yi Xiang seems to have a deep complaint about this matter, and Yi Fuxian doesn't know what to do with it, because of Tang Aunt. What is the relationship between the saint painting and the Zibai Palace? Yi Fuxian asked. There are very few people who know anything. I can only see a few clues. The paintings may be related to Huo Xiang. Yi Xiang said, Huo Xiang's phase is different from the phase on my behalf. The right side of the Nandu kingdom, which controls the military power, is now very strong, and he has been able to fight against the left phase space. Huo Xiang, who walked out of Zibai Palace several years ago then, it should be considered the back of the Zibai Palace. So, my sister-in-law and painting teacher, is the marriage between the Nandu and Huozheng families. Yi Fuxian's eyes flashed coldness. I'm afraid that Huofengliu hides it in the drum all the time. I don't know what role Zibai Palace plays in it. Do you still think your teacher is unfair? Yi Xiang said, you are prestigious, run. Luo Mansion, did you know that the big people who were present at that time were together? Yi Fuxian's mind moved quickly, and after thinking about many things in a short time, he said, why did you have to come to Zibai Palace to practice slang? Huo Xiang is in power now. Naturally, the Nandu family wants to mend relations with Zibai Palace. It is strange to send flowers to explain Zibai Palace's practices. As for why he came, other than the Nandu family's intentions, because of your Shigong, he is now training with your Shigong. He is esteemed senior, but unfortunately. Yi Xiang sighed. My teacher. Yi Fuxian showed a touch of different colors. Thanks to the appearance of the girl in Waji, since you already know her, and your mouth is strong, isn't that a relationship? Yi Xiang said lightly, his eyes seemed to see him, and Yi Fuxian's face was black. Can you guess? I know you walked the same way as your teacher that year. I remind you that you must stay in the palace and be careful outside, otherwise it will become a flower problem, and you will be in trouble if you do it yourself. Don't hurt my good student. Yi Xiang left after finishing speaking. Yi Fuxian looked down, looked at Yi Xiang with a speechless expression, said so much that he was worried for the rest of his life. I glanced back at the rest of my life and Yi Qingshuan, and Yi Fuxian was slightly injured. However, I didn't know that Yi Xiang's brows were frozen at this time, as if something was on his mind. Today, Zibai Palace and Tianfu Palace came to make him feel a little unusual. After Huo Xiang took power, Zibai Palace's desire for power had expanded. Gong is afraid that he will calm down. A few days later, news came from Zibai Palace, Mu Yongshuan and Huo Jiu together. As soon as this news came out, it caused an uproar. As the first beauty of the East China Sea Academy, I don't know how many people are watching it secretly. Today, the goddess in the minds of many people together with others. Even though that person was Mu Yongshuan, a genius in Zibai Palace, many people still had heartaches. Naturally reached Yi Fuxian's ears, and the doubts in his heart were even worse. What exactly did Mu Yongshuan want to do? Did Zibai Palace allow such rumors to spread? Although he didn't take it seriously, as time passed, the rumors became more and more intense, and his mood became a little worse, both for the rest of his life and Yi Qingshuan. Hua Ziyu, who was training in Zibai Palace, also heard this news. When Shu Shuyun came back, he told Yi Fuxian of Mu Yongshuan's provocation. In order to avoid anyone suspecting his relationship with Yi Fuxian, he stood up, afraid of Nandu. When the family finds out, it is not good for Yi Fuxian. But when various rumors appeared, he was not calm, and asked Mu Yongxuan to settle the account, but he couldn't find anyone. He wanted to leave Zibai Palace to find Yi Fuxian, but found that someone was staring at himself, as if everything was arranged on purpose, and he couldn't help but feel anxious. In Zibai Palace, Hua Jiu stood at the edge of the palace and looked at the East China Sea Palace, saying, "Yuyan, do you think he will misunderstand? If he really understood you, he probably wouldn't," said Shu Yuyan. His words are amazing. When there are too many people, it seems to be true. Even if you believe me, with his character, you will be very unhappy, and I don't go to him. Jiu lowered his head slightly. I don't want him to hear a voice like that. Zibai Palace seems to be doing this on purpose. Maybe they have guessed the relationship between you and him. If we go with him at this time, we confess. Shu Yuyan said. So, I'm not comfortable. Hua Jiu whispered, and Shu Yuyan stood silently beside her, and could feel the pain of the heavenly arrogance next to her. At this time, there were two figures in front of the other palaces, the old Zibai Palace that Yi Fuxian's parents saw, and Ku Nandu of the Nandu family. Your family in Nandu didn't say that you didn't want Waji to involve the children's private affairs, but now it seems that most of what Chia Fan said is true. The old man in Zibai Palace said faintly to Nandu. Isn't that confirmed? He is Keen Demon's disciple, even if the feeling of reconciliation is a little better, Nandu Ku said. There are many things that are reflected in the details. I think this golden man in your Nandu family seems to be on the same path as other generations, and ironically he is a disciple of Demon Keen. The old man smirked. I will tell the family, and XCU is still young, even if there is a feeling, forget it quickly. Nandu Ku said. Well, you Nandu family should be optimistic about it. Don't be the same as before. Now Yi Fuxian is training under Yi Xiang Gate. Although not many people know the story inside during that year's war, Yi's understanding of Zibai Palace says that maybe I see some clues. I don't want the two geniuses scouted by Takai Zugong to deal with Zibai Palace in the future. You Nandu family will sort it out yourself. The old man said it was a bit unpleasant to leave. Tong Nandu's gaze flashed over to the cold man, very similar to what happened that year. Nandu family hesitated and allowed things to develop. After so many years, they finally made a big mistake. Even if it was later made up, it was too late. Chapter 65. Women are incapable. Yi Fuxian was in a bad mood during this time. He has been practicing martial arts for a long time in the practice circle of the practice room, until the martial arts took the lead to break through and enter the 4-star glory. But the mage realm has not been broken. The mage needs the mentality to practice spiritual power, and he is a little confused now. The rumors about Donghai Zugong are still full of enthusiasm. On this day, outside of Donghai Zugong, a large group of people entered Zugong by the monsters, causing a lot of movement. The person headed by this mighty figure is actually a girl, wearing a fiery red dress, standing on a huge monster that is also fiery red. The whole person looks beautiful, and the appearance is very extraordinary, standing up. Beautiful, very energetic. I heard that Donghai Zugong Palace is the best place to practice in Donghai. There must be many geniuses who are of the same generation as me. I purposely came to see her during this trip. The girl said lightly, with a sense of arrogance in her voice. His goal was to have a look around the students at Takai Academy. Yun said. A group of people continued to move towards the East China Sea Academy. More and more people gathered, guessing the identity of these people in the heart. No one in the East China Sea Academy Palace came out to stop. The girl's body flashed. She jumped out of the monster directly, stood in the crowd, and said coldly, Is there no one in the East China Sea Academy? What do you cultivate for the realm? Asked a student of Takai Academy. 5-star glory realm, the girl said lightly. I will teach you. A 17-year-old boy stepped out and looked at the girl. Li Yan, Lord of the 5-star kingdom, please tell me. He said that there was a strong metallic aura blooming around his body, and a bright golden bird condensed and formed, then struck like lightning towards the girl. Around the girl's body, fire and spirits gathered wildly. It was also a large bird, but it was the phoenix divine bird. The flames soared, bringing a terrifying flame towards the huge golden bird, colliding in mid-air, and instantly smashed the huge golden bird. Then continued to rush forward. The teenager's face changed, his body moved backwards, but when he saw the fire, the phoenix fell instantly, with a very hot heat. He closed his eyes and felt his body was about to burn, but the phoenix stopped in front of him, and then disappeared into a flame. Too weak. The girl said lightly, the strongest academic palace in Donghe, only this power. Tong Donghai Zugong's disciples all felt a little embarrassed, and then one person came out, but there was no difference at the end of the story. The spell cast by the girl instantly overpowered him. Then, one after another appeared, and the end was the same. Mu Yunqing, 5-star glory world, destiny mage. Mu Yun stepped out of the greedy wolf palace and released his golden soul statue. He broke through the world a while ago, became stronger, witnessed the girl's dazzling face and life. Human talent, there is a faint imagination in his heart. The wind wrapped around the body, Mu Yun lightly turned into a monster, very quickly, and went towards the girl. When the spell came, she was full of golden light, smashing the mad fire, and couldn't help but feel a little excited. But at this moment, the girl's body moved, and the wind wrapped around her. His movements are very elegant, but he is also very fast, lighter and faster than Mu Yun. The two figures approached immediately, and then the crowd saw only one. A fiery red feeling flashed, and a loud sound, Mu Yunqing's body flew upside down, and then fell to the ground. The doll girl landed from the air. She was even more amazing, she was very charming, and there was a pair of fiery red wings behind her, and her fists were also fiery red. After landing, the red light gradually disappeared. Weak magician of destiny, the girl said lightly, and Mu Yun looked pale from the ground. He found that the girl was too lazy to look at him, and couldn't help but feel cold inside. After Yi Fuxian entered the East China Sea Academy, this was already his third humiliating defeat. News of the showdown spread here, and more people came. While guessing the girl's identity, many people were shocked by her arrogance. Several disciples in the seventh house also began to participate in the battle, but they were all from the five-star glory realm. After all, there is a beautiful girl in front of them, and they can't be shot by people in a high realm, but they find that in the same world, it seems that no one has won. Nothing could push the girl's full strength. Until a very famous young genius shot in the ruined army palace, this made the girl take it seriously. A beautiful flame enveloped his body, and a bright phoenix flame appeared, which was the soul of life. The current young girl was even more noble. Magician destiny, fire soul phoenix fire, dual attribute wind, fire, martial arts. Very beautiful, one couldn't help but tremble. Donghai Zugong can overwhelm the girl. He was afraid that it was only a girl from Zibaigon and his talent was unmatched, but he always kept a low profile. There have been a lot of rumors about him recently, and he seems to be in love. The genius boy who broke through the army palace was also defeated. Then, several people shot one after another, and no one could beat him. No matter his talent, spell, or combat skills, he was extremely strong in cultivation. Flame Phoenix is a soul. I don't know who is stronger than Yi Fuxian's golden-winged dapping bird soul. Someone in the crowd whispered. The phoenix and the golden-winged roc were both divine birds, the former having the wind and fire attributes, and the latter having the wind and gold attributes. The young girl averted her gaze, and looked at the people talking in the crowd and asked, "Someone in the East China Sea Academy has the soul of a golden-winged dapping bird?" For a moment the speaker spoke, his hearing was too sharp. "Yes, Yi Fuxian, spiritual practice genius in Wakir Palace. That's human. How strong is that?" the girl asked again. "Samsung's glory realm a while ago, it's unclear now, but the combat power is very strong. Even a 5-star glory realm, he can beat." The man said, "Since he can fight Zhou Mu, he naturally has such strength. The realm is too low, but I want to see the soul of the golden-winged dapping bird. Come on, go to Wakir Palace to bring people here." The girl said lightly, as if there was an order. Someone behind her nodded and left. This scene makes people feel strange. This girl is too arrogant, right? Directing people to bring people to Wakir Palace. What they didn't know was that Wakir Palace actually found Yi Fuxian, and it was Yi Zhang, the palace owner. "Someone challenged me." Yi Fuxian was in a bad mood, and then said, "Not interested." Yi glared at him and said, "If you are not interested, you will leave. You thought that an ordinary person would challenge you and I would come myself." Yi Fuxian froze and said, "Who challenged me? Go and see for yourself." Yi Xiang said. Yi Fuxian said helplessly, "Okay." He said, the rest of his life, and Yi Qingshuan went with Iran. When Yi Fuxian came to the battlefield, he was surrounded by a large crowd. Yi Fuxian and the three of them walked into the crowd and saw the girl in a red fire dress fighting against one person. The dazzling phoenix soul is very dazzling and immediately defeats the opponent. Yi Fuxian. Many people saw Yi Fuxian whispering. The girl turned her eyes and fell on Yi Fuxian. "Your life's soul is a golden-winged roc?" the girl asked, and Yi Fuxian saw a strange expression on the other side, and said, "Depressed, woman." The young girl frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" "I don't want to hit a woman." Yi Fuxian turned around and wanted to sneak away. He had a psychological foreshadowing of the latter. "Stop!" the girl shouted coldly, "May I let you go?" Yi Fuxian's steps stagnate. This woman looks very arrogant, and Yi Xiang himself called her to see the battle. What is her identity? Turning around, Yi Fuxian looked at the girl and said, "You have no fists, no eyes. You are so beautiful, it won't hurt you, and you won't hit." The crowd around me was embarrassed. Yi Fuxian was indeed Yi Fuxian, still so arrogant. "Do not talk too much." The girl sneered, "It hurts me. Can you?" Yi Fuxian's face was black. "Why do women talk like that? I cannot stand it." "All my life," Yi Fuxian shouted, but after waiting for a while, he found that no one answered him. Looking back, he saw that he was chatting with Yi Qingshuan. Yi Fuxian's face was stunned, and he whispered, "Good brother. I can only go up alone." Yi Fuxian walked forward in depression, and saw the girl looking at him with a sneer. "Release your soul, otherwise there will be no chance," the girl said proudly. Yi Fuxian sighed silently, and the bright golden-winged dapping bird bloomed full of vitality. The phoenix and the phoenix soul behind the young girl also bloomed, and the two beautiful brilliants complemented each other, attracting a lot of attention for a while. Can Yi Fuxian be able to beat this talented girl? Boom! The flame spell condensed and appeared tilde and then turned into a phoenix terrifying flame hitting Yi Fuxian's body. I saw Yi Fuxian's beautiful golden luster around his body. Endless golden aura converged on the wings, and the two wings merged, blocking in front of them, and let the fire phoenix descend on the wings. Oh! The wings suddenly opened, the raging fire spread directly, Yi Fuxian's body flashed, and it turned into golden lightning. Seeing this scene, the young girl rushed out, and the fire phoenix and golden-winged rock continued to approach. The two bodies of the two flew at the same time, and then approached, the girl's fist struck, the fire remained, and there was a phoenix. Yi Fuxian also exploded into the palm, with a hidden dragon howl. The next moment, people saw two figures violently explode in mid-air. Powerful rumbling sounds continued to emit, and fire and metallic auras raged. Bang, bang. Two loud noises came out, and then everyone saw the girl's body fall from the air and fall to the ground fiercely. Figures rushed forward, all following the girl's guard. Another middle-aged figure with a slender figure like a jade-faced scholar descended. After this person appeared, many big figures in Tokai Academy came forward. Yi Xiang was also there, and met him face to face. Look at Zhao Xiang. The people all faced the middle-aged figure, and the disciples of Tokai Zugong all showed different colors. Zuo Xiang. At this time, the girl rose from the ground, and she put her hand on her chest, and she immediately attracted countless eyes. I saw the beautiful girl's eyes look at Yi Fuxian falling from the air, and cursed sadly, "You bastard, shameless." Yi Fuxian was completely dumbfounded. Is that so? Chapter 66, Kiss Me. Yi Fuxian was greatly injured. The last time he hit a woman and was scolded for not being a man. Now he was being scolded for being such a shameless bastard. Can you take on a good challenge? Pooh. Yi Qingshuan next to the rest of his life couldn't help but laugh again when he remembered the last thing, and looked at the position of the girl's hands, and then Mei Mei looked at Yi Fuxian and said, "Excess. I said no fists, no eyes, no fight, you have to fight." Yi Fuxian reasoned. The young girl looked at him coldly, and found it useless to talk to women. "Teacher, I want this person," the girl said to middle age like a scholar. Yi Fuxian was slightly dumbfounded and looked at the girl in front of him strangely, and said, "I have a girlfriend." The young girl froze, then seemed to understand what Yi Fuxian said, and couldn't help but change her face. "You shameless." Cough. Zhao Xiang, whom the girl called her teacher, cough, looked at the girl and said, "You are the one who said the wrong thing." The young girl froze, thinking to say that I want this person. There seems to be some ambiguity, but where does she really care? Zhao said, "Teacher, you know what I mean." Ready. Zhao Xiang looked at him, then looked at Yi Fuxian and said, "What is your name?" The younger Yi Fuxian met the seniors. Yi Fuxian saluted, "Seniors, your disciples will challenge me." "I know." Zhao Xiang nodded. "Very good, he is very strong, he doesn't even rely on combat skills, he is far from your opponent." "Teacher, why do you say that?" The girl looked at her teacher with some grievances. "This is the truth, the realm is lower than yours. Now I know that there is a sky outside, it is only a school in Donghai, and it will meet in the future," Zhao said to the girl. At this time, Chia Fan stepped out of the crowd and came to Zhao Xiang. He looked at Yi Fuxian indifferently, and then whispered in the middle-aged ear. He looked at Zhao Xiang, and looked at Yi Fuxian in surprise. Yi Fuxian was a little confused, and looked a little cold at Chia Fan. This guy was afraid to try to frame himself again. "Yi Fuxian, come here." Zhao Xiang said. Yi Fuxian nodded and walked to Zhao Xiang. "I came here for the ruins of Qingzhou City. When I heard Chia Fan say that someone from the East China Sea Palace had gotten out of there alive, I came here to take a look. I didn't expect to meet you now. You want to follow me? Rest assured, I will try to protect your safety." Zhao whispered to Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian's eyes lit up. It turned out to be the remains of Yi Qingdai. Qingzhou City belongs to Donghai Prefecture. Since the appearance of such a big event in Yi Qingdai's corpse had been exposed, Donghai Prefecture naturally wanted to enter Nandu country, so it was normal for Nandu country to send people, but Chia Fan even shook himself up. Because he was afraid that he wanted to kill himself, he knew what was on Tianyao Mountain. However, Chia Fan's idea is afraid that it will fall. When Tianyao Mountain is reached, Snow Monkey will face it. Senior, Qian Yaoshan guarding the statue Yi Qingdai is the demon lord who speaks. He is very strong. Even if Senior has a deep state, I am afraid that it is dangerous. I lived by chance last time. Yi Fuxian suggested. I know, but His Majesty is still alive, I still have to go and see. Zhao Xiang nodded. I have sent someone to explore the road, and when they return we will leave, I will let you follow me. Yi Fuxian pretended to be in trouble, then nodded reluctantly. If there is danger, senior should remember to evacuate. Calm. Zhao Xiang patted Yi Fuxian's shoulder. Yi Fuxian sighed in his heart. He didn't expect to return to Qingzhou City so soon, so he had to encourage Senior Snowy Ape to ask him if he couldn't get out of the mountain. What are you talking about? The girl asked as she stepped forward. I persuaded him to agree to your request, now he agrees. Go to the girl. The young girl smiled indifferently and looked at Yi Fuxian proudly. Forget your acquaintance and follow me well in the future. Yi Fuxian was a little depressed, and said to the girl, although you look beautiful, I really have a boyfriend and look better than you. Bastard. The girl was very angry. Zhao said, okay, miss, we have to go. Are you bothering? Xiang Zhao faced Donghai Zugong's humanity again. You're welcome, didn't you stay in Zugong for a few days? No, I live with the owner of Xiafu. Zhao Xiang shook his head. He is the left wing of the Nandu kingdom, Dong Heifu is his subordinate and naturally lives in Xiafu. I will pick you up when you leave. Zhao Xiang said to Yi Fuxian again, and then took someone away. When the girl left, she still looked at Yi Fuxian coldly, and Yi Fuxian shook her head. Shrugging his shoulders is fine. When he arrived at Tianyao Mountain, he still didn't know who took and scared him. After Xiang Zhao left, many people in Donghai Zugong looked at Yi Fuxian. This person is truly perverted. The students in Zugong couldn't beat the girl. He shot it, crushed it, and praised Zhao Xiang. The big people also watched Yi Fuxian closely. This child will not be liked by the left. The crowd slowly dispersed. Yi Qingshuan stepped forward and smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. You are miserable. Others are afraid that you will be remembered. The face value is high and troublesome. Yi Fuxian sighed. Yi Qingshuan glared at him and said, obviously you hit where you shouldn't have hit, too much. This is a fight, where I can predict, Yi Fuxian said innocently. Who knows if you did it on purpose? Yi Qingshuan looked at him with a smile. You know too much. The rest of his life begins. Yi Fuxian looked at the two and sighed. The rest of your life, you have changed. You teach. For the rest of his life, Yi Fuxian could only regret. Go! Yi Xiang shouted. Yi Fuxian chased forward, and said, Gongzhu, I remember the last time you told me that Huo Xiang and Zhao Xiang were in court, was it Zhao Xiang? Yes. Yi Xiang nodded. You know why I can't refuse. You are very kind of selling me like this, right? Yi Fuxian was a little depressed. What if something happens to me? You are not my disciple, do you have anything to do with me? Yi Xiang looked at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian blinked, but he was speechless. You just said you have a boyfriend, Ji. Yi Xiangdao. Can you guess this? Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang. Do you think you are smart? The people in Zibai Palace are not stupid. Rumors of Mu Yongxuan and Hua Jiu trying to test you, I'm afraid they have guessed your relationship. Yi Xiangdao. If you know, you'll know. Yi Fuxian said lightly. These days have become irritated. He is thinking about when to announce this matter. The rumors are very unpleasant. You are so free and easy, you don't know where to start. Yi Xiangdao. Aren't you there? Yi Fuxian looked up. Yi Xiang glanced at Yi Fuxian and picked it up. Zhao Xiangquan's strength was temporarily acquired, and won the trust of His Highness Nandu country. If you can climb up with him during this journey, the Nandu family may consider you, Yi Xiang said again. Yi Fuxian was a little depressed. Both Emperor Yi Qing and his father rightly said that they were going to become emperors, and they even wanted the Nandu family to consider it. It's too tragic. I will take you to Zibai Palace, and it is time to balance you. Yi Xiang suddenly said. Yi Fuxian froze, then smiled. The palace lord is wise and warlike. Go out. Yi Xiang rolled his eyes. I will take you to meet the seniors of Zibai Palace, your teacher, not to see the little girlfriend. I understand. Yi Fuxian showed a clear look. Yi Xiang did not want to speak. The next day, Yi Xiang brought Yi Fuxian to visit the seniors in Zibai Palace. Yi Xiang Nai was the court lord of the Wakir Palace. His identity is the same as the palace of the Zibai Palace. He took the initiative to visit the door with his descendants. Zibai Palace was naturally impossible to stop, and he was allowed to step on Zibai and Yi Fuxian. Palace, go in the direction of a certain palace. In the Purple Palace, Hua Jiu found out from Shu Yuyan's mouth what happened yesterday, and her eyes looked sad, saying, he really agreed, bastard, bastard. It must be because of Zhao Xiang, he can't refuse. Shu Yuyan whispered softly. Is that woman beautiful? Hua Jiu asked. Yes. Shu Yuyan nodded, but not as beautiful as you. That man likes beauty, it must be intentional. Hua Jiu was even more sad when she heard that the girl was beautiful, and whispered, now that the rumors about me are boiling, and I don't go to her, will she be angry with me? Now, and then like other women. What are you thinking? Shu Yuyan sighed in Hua Jiu's heart. The goddess, who was always calm, would also be upset. She knew it was too poisonous. You don't know him, he promised to go with the woman will definitely like him, he is very excited, he can't resist the temptation of a beautiful woman. Hua Jiu was worried. He has an extraordinary charm. Shu Yuyan was a little speechless. Hua Jiu nodded seriously. Is keen old. At this time, a voice came. Hua Jiu and Shu Yuyan looked up, and then saw two figures standing outside the courtyard. The speaker was Yi Xiang, but Hua Jiu's eyes fell directly on the handsome young man behind Yi Xiang. Her beautiful eyes condensed there, and then she saw the child blinking at her. Hua Jiu has seen the owner of Yigon, and the senior is there. Hua Jiu said. Shu Yuyan gave the same salute, smiled at Hua Jiu, and then left here. I visited Chia Qin Lao. Yi Xiang said. Hua Jiu nodded, took the lead, Yi Fuxian followed. Don't pretend, if you have something to say, finish it, then come to me. Yi Xiang said, then stepped forward and left. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang's back, thinking that the palace master was still very cute. What are you doing looking at me like this? Yi Fuxian looked at Hua Jiu with a smile and saw that Hua Jiu's beautiful eyes were slightly red, and then he pulled Yi Fuxian into a room. He closed the door, looked at him with Wajiayu and said, are you going to King Luo? Yes. Yi Fuxian nodded. Don't believe the rumors, I have nothing to do with New Yongshuan. Hua Jiu was slightly at a disadvantage. I know. Yi Fuxian nodded with a smile. Hua Jiu stepped forward and saw him spread his slender hands, gently holding Yi Fuxian, and slightly raised his head. Yi Fuxian looked at the shocked face in front of him, and the eyes that were looking at him were full of affection. In the bright eyes, there were faintly suffocating teardrops. Kiss me. A dream-like voice came out, letting Yi Fuxian's heart melt. Chapter 67. New Yongshuan is not worthy. Yi Fuxian looked at the girl's delicate and perfect face, sexy red lips, and his heart moved. He also reached out his hand and hugged the girl's slender waist, then lowered his head slightly, and kissed the charming place. Just a little jerky. The young girl closed her eyes, and her beautiful face instantly turned crimson, with the same response. For a long time, lips parted. The young girl bit her lips lightly, and there was a hint of charm in her pure and beautiful eyes. Now I am your man, you are responsible to me. Hua Jiu looked at Yi Fuxian. Ah. Yi Fuxian blinked. Ah, what do you want to deny? Hua Jiu looked at him. Oh. Yi Fuxian saw the anger in front of the young girl, and his heart moved. Since this is my person, then come again. He said, holding Wajiayu again. He attacked again. Wajiayu's eyes flashed. His face became even redder, but he felt warm in his heart. I was separated for a long time. Yan Wajiayu looked at Yi Fuxian beautifully, with a hint of hatred, suddenly said, can't you go? Do not go. Yi Fuxian wondered. That woman yesterday. Hua Jiu said. Yi Fuxian froze, then looked at Hua Jiu with a smile, apparently jealous. I can't refuse Zhao Xiang's orders, Yi Fuxian said. You can't be attracted to her, she won't seduce you. Hua Jiu said. Yi Fuxian was silent for a while, so the woman's jealousy was so great. But my heart is warm. She doesn't look as good as my fairy, how can I be tempted? Yi Fuxian said. Hua Jiu Maimu had a little pride, but said, it doesn't work to look better than me. Okay, I just like fairies. Yi Fuxian nodded. Hua Jiu then showed a satisfied smile. She was extraordinarily brilliant and beautiful, and Yi Fuxian was tempted again. Today, this temptation has completely lost its resistance. I know that you are always in your father's business, but do you do it when you are strong? Hua Ji said, I don't want to see you in danger. Well, am I okay? Yi Fuxian knew that he was referring to the Luo Palace. They seem to be second-guessing our relationship. Hua Jiu's voice was a little lower, and she was worried that they would be embarrassed by Yi Fuxian. I want to know sooner or later, I dare to spread your rumors, I want to announce to everyone that you are mine. Pride. Hua Jiu looked at him. Jiaoshi said, will you marry me in the future? Of course, everyone said, you are mine. Yi Fuxian said. Then I will wait for you, Hua Jiu said softly, no matter how hard it is, you must not give up. Okay. Yi Fuxian nodded. Let's study the teacher, and cook raw rice. Hua Jiu's face turned red again, and she gave Yi Fuxian an embarrassing look, laughing, the beauty you want. You are like this, I really can't help it. Yi Fuxian sighed, and the two were still hugging, blinking, and then loosened their hands, glaring at Yi Fuxian, said, cheap to you now. Master Yigong is still waiting for you, let's go and see the master. Yi Fuxian saw the fairy moving in front of him, thinking of coming to Japan. The two walked out of the door and walked side by side, and Hua Ji reminded again, remember, don't hang out with that woman. I understand. Yi Fuxian said, how worried he was. Also, pay attention to safety. If something goes wrong, I will marry someone else, you have to think clearly. Hua Ji said, is this okay? Yi Fuxian was speechless, but could he threaten like this? Why not? Hua Jiu Maimu was a little proud of herself, so you know how to respect yourself. You know, I know how I can do things before I cook rice with raw rice. Yi Fuxian said. Hua Jiu pinched his waist fiercely. The two came to another courtyard, and Yi Xiang was chatting with an old man in the courtyard. The old man with grey hair, looks very old, seems to be in the twilight years, but his eyes chatted with Yi Xiang, smiled and smiled very kindly. Xi Yi Fuxian walked to the old man, and then he said, Yi Fuxian met the teacher. The old man looked at Yi Fuxian, and said quietly, listen to Jiu and talk to you, come and sit down. Yes. Yi Fuxian nodded, then came to the old man and sat down. Listening to his comments, he can't learn romantic kinyi yet, has this been to you? The old man asked Yi Fuxian. Well, the teacher taught me a lot of phonics, Yi Fuxian said. Come on, play a song for me, said the old man, and there was a gukan next to him. Xi Yi Fuxian walked over and sat down. When he touched the rope with his 10 fingers, the temperament of the whole person also changed. Later, the melodious sound of the piano reminded in the courtyard of serenity and tranquility, as if it could calm people's hearts. Except for the sound of the piano, there is no sound in the courtyard. The atmosphere is like letting people throw all their troubles away. At the end of the song, the page is still quiet. The old man's cloudy eyes seemed to smile with a hint of memory. He looked at Yi Fuxian, his eyes were better and kinder. I heard comments that you have studied the piano for less than a year, and your talent is even higher than in the past. The old man said, Yi Xiang said that your life is a golden-winged rock bird, but Luo Mansion uses a piano sound spell. Does this soul also contain spiritual attributes? Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang and Hua Jiu, and seemed to understand what he meant. Yi Xiangdao said, Qin Lao paid too much for your teacher. He studied Qin Tao with all his heart, and is a true Qin Tao master. Put your whole life into your teacher, but then. Jie Yizhang did not continue, but Yi Fuxian already understood. Shi is different from the others in Zibai Palace, Hua Jiu also said. Xi Yi Fuxian nodded slightly, looked at the good old man's eyes, a faint light appeared on his body, and then the Gukan ghost appeared, hanging behind him, and slowly disappeared. Life and soul are twins. Yi Xiang trembled on the same day. He heard that Yi Fuxian broke through the Luo mansion and used a phonic spell to fight. He realized that Yi Fuxian had super talent and seemed to be good at everything, be it spiritual or martial arts. But when he saw the twin souls, he still felt shocked. Okay, a good student has been accepted by Mary. The old man's voice was low and said, I didn't expect to be in Lois at dusk, and can pass on the code. Yizhang, Fuxian, I will stay for a few days, you won't mind, right? Okay. Yi Xiang nodded, then looked at Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu. If I go alone, I'm afraid that they will notice I'm on the side of Zibai Palace. They already suspect your relationship. In this way, I am afraid that they will be more jealous. The palace masters have guessed, they are not fools, they have tried it with rumors. If you can't see the clues, you know it. Yi Fuxian looked at Hua Jiu and said, one day I will let Donghai study palace tofu. Since you are willing to take the risk, of course I will not say anything. Qin Lao, I will not bother you anymore. Yi Xiang withdrew. Yi Fuxian looked at his back, and said, Master Yigong knows that I am good at Qin magic, and purposely sent it to me. Come here, you. Yi Xiang is loyal, but this is Zibai Palace, it is changing. The old man shook his head and said to Xiu, girl, go and get all my grades. Hua Jiu nodded, and then left for a while, holding a lot of music in her hands when she came back. Give it to Fuqian, familiarize yourself with the score. The old man said, nodded his head and gave Yi Fuxian a score. Yi Fuxian looked a little more serious, seriously took over the score, he knew what it meant. Teacher Zunziu was dismissed, and the ancestor who was supposed to bequeath to the teacher now intends to pass it on. You study with the teacher, I will go first. Hua Jiu said. Yi Fuxian nodded slightly, and started to read the music. Yjiu returned to his own page. It didn't take long for someone from Zibai Palace to come here to find him. An old man said to him, Palace Lord, you went alone. Yi Fuxian lived with you. Here. Master wants to keep him studying piano. What are you going to do to find the senior master? Hua Jiu said coldly. The eyes of the people in Zibai Palace flashed, and then went to Qin Lao's courtyard. Yjiu watched them leave, and her pretty eyes were very calm. When he let go, he calmed down. A few things need to be clarified. I walked to the edge of the courtyard, and the wind wrapped his body, and he stepped forward towards the bottom of Zibai Palace. In the Donghai Learning Academy, many disciples walked in the Learning Academy, and at this time, someone stared at the void and exclaimed, interpretation of flowers. One after another looked up into the air, and saw the multi-attribute aura surrounding Hua Jiu's beautiful body, walking like a fairy in the air. So beautiful, even if the amazing girl who came with the left side yesterday still loses, it is indeed my first beauty in Tokai Academy. Countless young people were blown away. The fairy in the sky can only be seen from a distance. However, she was already in love, and the fairy also had someone she liked. New Yongxuan, many people are envious and jealous of that name. Sun Huajiyu's footsteps stopped, and his figure fluttered. When she saw many people looking at her, Huajiyu said, "Recently, there have been some rumors about me at Takai Academy." He looked at her with all eyes and seemed to feel an unusual breath. "That's not true," Huajiyu said quietly, and immediately caused a wave in the crowd. These days when Xie Huajiyu and New Yongxuan fell in love spread throughout the East China Sea Academy, but now Huajiyu was denying it. Was it wrong? Sun Huajiyu walked over from Zibai Palace to clarify this matter. After I finished speaking, Huajiyu turned and walked away. "So you don't like anyone?" Someone summoned courage and shouted at Huaji. Xie Huajiyu paused slightly. The figure of a teenager in Zibai Palace appeared in his mind. A smile appeared on his face. Yes. When I saw the smile on Huajiyu's face, many people stared at the same time. At the same time, the burning hope in my heart was shattered. Huajiyu already liked someone else, but it was not New Yongxuan in the rumors. Who is he who is better than New Yongxuan? Someone said. Bian Huajiyu thought of the extremely dazzling young man, and the smile on his face became brighter and brighter. New Yongxuan, it is not worthy of being compared to him, he said, stepping a little, flying into the air like a fairy. Many people stood in a dull place, listening to the girl's words as they left, as if they heard their heartbreaking voice. Chapter 68, Kill. The appearance of Huajiyu immediately caused a storm in Donghai Zugong. During this time, news of his love for Mu Yongxuan spread, and it was even said that Mu Yongxuan herself said that no one in Zibai Palace denied this. Everyone thinks it's true. However, today, a young girl with peerless style, personally withdrew from Zibai Palace, and announced to the people in Donghai Zoo Palace that it was not true. He has someone he likes, but not Mu Yongxuan. He likes people. Mu Yongxuan is not worthy of being compared to him. The first beauty of Donghai Zoo Palace, Hua Ziyu, personally said such words. It is conceivable to know what kind of wave it will be. This is also a hard slap, drawn on the face of the genius of Zibai Palace, Mu Yongxuan. This is really not meant for Mu Yongxuan. Maybe she is really angry at this rumor. This rumor can hurt the person she really likes. People in Donghai Academy can imagine what kind of genius Mu Yongxuan is in Zibai Palace right now. However, more than this, they want to know who she is in Huaji. I can make Huaji talk about her being beautiful when she mentions it, and Mu Yongxuan doesn't even have the qualifications compared to her. Do you really have such a person? After all, Mu Yongxuan was originally the evil genius of Zibai Palace. At this time, in Huaji's mouth, he was practicing the piano in the Purple Palace, immersed in it from day to night. Prince is indeed a master of piano art. His achievements on the magic piano had reached its pinnacle. Even if it's romantic, it's much worse than that. He had even reached the realm of releasing another spell with the sound of a piano. Obviously, compared to the time when he taught flowers and love, his achievements were deeper. The night was dark, and the Purple Palace under the bright moonlight looked even more magnificent. In the palace courtyard, there is the sound of a piano. The boy is sitting on a stone bench in the ancient pavilion and playing the piano. Next to him, a stunning young girl is sitting quietly beside him, listening to music. Under the moonlight, this scene looked very peaceful and beautiful. After a long absence, the music began to break, and the young man looked at the girl next to him gently. "Fairy, it's time to rest." "No, I'll be right here with you." Huajiyu's beautiful eyes were as soft as water, and she smiled and shook her head. "Then I will go with you to rest," Yi Fuxian said. "Don't think." Huajiyu smiled lightly. What was this bad guy thinking? "Hey, isn't that my wife?" Yi Fuxian said sadly. "This trick is useless." Huajiyu smiled, pretending to be pathetic all the time. Even though he said that, his body leaned against Yi Fuxian's body, and he lay down slowly, lying in Yi Fuxian's arms. In the daytime, the girl who is as arrogant as a fairy in Donghai Zugong is really a little girl who is in love at this moment, very gentle. Seems useful. Yi Fuxian looked at the beauty in Huizhong, reached out and stroked her hair, lowered her head slightly, and kissed her forehead with endless tenderness in her eyes. Huajiyu smiled sweetly, leaned her head on Yi Fuxian's feet and whispered softly, "Don't disturb, keep practicing the piano, and I will rest like this." When Yi Fuxian heard Huajiyu's words, he looked at him sadly, and said, "Fairy, can I still play the piano like this?" "I don't care, just let me sleep." Huajiyu showed a hint of pride and closed her eyes. "Ah," grinned the fairies. Yi Fuxian felt too sad and started to play the piano silently. If someone from the East China Sea Academy knew that Yi Fuxian was feeling down at this moment, I don't know if he would have slapped him with a slap. Qin Yin calmed down. Hua Xiu fell asleep quickly. Yi Fuxian looked at the girl in his arms. His eyelashes were very long and beautiful, and he still had a light smile on his face when he fell asleep. As if it was sweet and some fantastic seeing the sleeping beauty in front of him, Yi Fuxian also showed a beautiful smile, and said softly, "Fairy, you are poisonous." He said, raised his head again, and continued to play. The sound of the piano from night to day, Yu Fuxian only felt the transformation of his mental strength, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Lately, he had been troubled by rumors and unease, but last night, he never felt in his heart. The serenity and beauty of the piano, and the temper of the piano's sound, breaks through mental powers without realizing it. In this case, the martial arts realm and the master realm are both four-star glory realms. Cough. The sound of coughing broke the calm of the morning. Yu Fuxian watched the old man come over, with a trembling smile on his face. His eyes opened, and then he got up with a red glow on his face. Sir. Hua Jiu lowered her head and shouted, a hint of embarrassment in her voice. Young and nice. The old man looked at the two with a smile, like a golden boy and girl pair, and looked at them as if they could feel that innocent feeling. I hope you will be like this in your life, and always love each other like teenagers. The old man smiled and blessed. Xi Yu Fuxian and Hua Jiu looked at each other, both with gentle smiles. Master, definitely will, Yu Fuxian said. Don't forget your training, the old man said with a smile. Yu Fuxian nodded with a smile and continued to practice the piano. Wajiayu also trained here and accompanied him. Han Mo came to call my brother. There was a voice outside, and the smile in Qin Shao's eyes narrowed, and said lightly, come in. His voice lowered, and he saw several figures walking for a moment. The person he led was the old man from Zibai Palace whom Yu Fuxian had seen twice. Brother is good today. Han Mo smiled at Qin Lao. Is there something wrong with Brother Han? Qin Lao asked. It's not a big deal. I heard that Yu Fuxian is here to learn piano with his older brother. Han Mo said with a smile. His eyes fell on Yu Fuxian. I saw you from the palace last time. Come and visit Zibai Palace, and don't tell me what happened. The juniors came with the owner of Yigong. They did not tell the seniors, and they still hope that the seniors are not to blame, Yu Fuxian said politely. By the way, now that you are studying piano with your elder brother, it is better to enter my Zibai Palace. Xi Yu Fuxian smiled and shook his head with a bitter smile. The predecessor joked again. Now that he has entered the Wakur Palace and then entered the Zibai Palace, won't he betray the Wakur Palace, such a disciple? Will the senior dare to accept it? That's right. The old man nodded and said, don't enter Zibai Palace, and according to Zibai Palace's rules, you can't stay in Zibai Palace for too long. After hearing his words, Yu Fuxian's eyes lit up, saw the old man's smile, and saw Mu Yongxuan standing behind him. How could Yu Fuxian not understand that Han Mo was hiding a knife in his laughter, and he was at Luowang's house that day to remind him of course will not be the other party. Why, I left him here to learn the piano with me. Do you have an opinion? At this moment, Qin Lao's cloudy eyes are sharp, and the temperament of the whole person seems to have changed. His robes fluttered and his white hair fluttered. Han Mo lowered his head and said, Big brother is angry, Big brother just talks to his heart's content, then he leaves. He said, he actually turned around and said, Yongxuan, I don't apologize to Xiu. Yes. Mu Yongxuan stepped forward, watching Hua Jiu say, the recent rumors have caused a bad influence on the brothers and sisters, and I hope they can't be blamed. Go. Hua Jiu looked at Mu Yongxuan indifferently and said a word. Mu Yongxuan's face was calm, and her somewhat handsome face was slightly embarrassed. Yesterday, Donghai Zugong, Hua Jiu announced that the rumors were not true. If that was the case, it wouldn't have had much of an impact on her, but Hua Jiu didn't even give her face, and faced her in public. Frankly, she wasn't worthy of being compared to the person she liked. Today, Donghai Zugong talks about him everywhere, like a clown. At this time, Hua Jiu said endlessly to him, come out. He glanced at Yu Fuxian next to Wajiayu. He naturally understood that the person Wajiayu was pointing at was the boy in front of him. Yesterday Xiushi said publicly that I am not worthy of being compared with you. Today, I will not bother here with Master Shi, and I will have the opportunity to ask Hishidi for advice. Mu Yongxuan still kept her courtesy and said to Yu Fuxian. Yu Fuxian didn't know what happened in Donghai Zugong yesterday, but listening to Mu Yongxuan, he could guess something. Maybe when he decided to stay in Zibai Palace, Hua Ziyu no longer ran away. Personally, the rumors broke. Thinking of this, Yu Fuxian smiled gently at Hua Jiu, only to see her holding Hua Jiu's hand. Looking at Mu Yongxuan seems to be a strong response to what Mu Yongxuan said to her that day. Seeing this scene, Mu's face Yongxuan is even more embarrassing. Down. Like Hua Ziyu, Yu Fuxian only said one word. Mu Yongxuan even stated that Hua Ziyu was in love with her. Even if it was Zibai Palace's intention, she still couldn't stand it. I feel Hua Jiu's dependence on herself. Yu Fuxian understands that this incident has definitely caused damage to her heart and made her sensitive and fragile. This account has not been counted by him. Uncle Shibo. Mu Yongxuan bowed to Qin Lao, his fist slightly, and he looked at Yu Fuxian coldly. Then he turned around and headed outside, following Han Mo. At this time, Han Mo also calmed his face and said coldly, the Nandao family sent him to Zibai Palace for spiritual practice. Now it seems that I am not used to it. In that case, no matter how good his talent is, what use is that talent? Teacher, and Yi Fuxian, I am afraid that this will be a scourge. New Yongxuan said. Han Mo sneered, that teenager doesn't know how to meet and easily dies. Wakur Palace can't protect him for how long? New Yongxuan heard her teacher's words, and there was a cold murder in her eyes. A few days later, Yi Xiang came to Zibai Palace to pick up people. Zhao Xiang had sent someone to prepare for a trip to Qingzhou City. In the courtyard, Yi Xiang walked in front, his body suspended in the air, and he stood against his hands. Behind him, Yi Fuxian said to Huo Ziyu, Qingzhou City is not far from Donghai City, and there is a monster on the left. Able to go back and forth, I will return soon, no need to worry. Well, I will wait for you. Huo Jiyu said softly, no matter how long it took. Fairy, I'm leaving. Yi Fuxian's eyes were a little reluctant, then he left with Yi Xiang. Huo Jiyu's beautiful eyes looked at his returning back, and until Yi Fuxian completely disappeared, he turned to practice. Chapter 69. My name is Donghuang. Outside East China Sea Academy, Zhao Xiang was already waiting for him when Yi Fuxian came. The young girl noticed Yi Fuxian's arrival, Mei coldly swept over her, and said, let's fight again. Yi Fuxian's face is black, thinking whether this woman has a tendency to be abused. Don't fight. Yi Fuxian glanced at the girl lightly. What do you mean by your eyes? Looking at Yi Fuxian's eyes, the girl's anger seems to have surfaced again. Fight me again, I'm afraid you'll cry. Yi Fuxian said, determined not to hit a woman. You. The girl pointed at Yi Fuxian. Well, miss, set off, don't you scream to follow her. Zhao was helpless to this little ancestor. You wait. The girl looked to the left and said, teacher, I want him to be my guard. Yi Fuxian was slightly stunned and leaked Zhao Xiangdao, senior. Don't take this. Don't be a fool. Zuoshan glanced at the girl and ordered, go. The singing voice fell, and a group of people rode the beasts and headed for the East China Sea. I don't care, teacher. Didn't you say he is talented? It is good to be my guard, and he can often accompany me to fight and practice my practical experience. The girl is coquettishly to the left. Yi Fuxian is stunned. This is. What is she? Then you should ask others whether they agree or not, Zhao Xiang said. Yi Fuxian secretly said that Zhao Xiangming was a sage. The young girl looked at Yi Fuxian and said, you follow me, definitely better than your training in Donghai Zugong. No. Yi Fuxian thought about the fairy accusation, and firmly refused, I really have a girlfriend. You. The girl also seemed to get used to Yi Fuxian's helplessness, and suddenly smiled, very beautiful, and said to Yi Fuxian, does your boyfriend really make me beautiful? Yi Fuxian saw the smile on the girl's face, and he was silent for a while. Isn't it too soon to change his face? Hey, how about beauty? It's a shame for someone so honest. A word he said yesterday, he even remembered that the woman's appearance to herself was really. Although you are beautiful, my boyfriend looks better. Yi Fuxian said solemnly. The girl's smile disappeared instantly, sneered, believe me. I said. He seemed to know that there was no hope, and he did not see Yi Fuxian again. I'm very confident. Yi Fuxian wants to see the fairy, maybe this woman will not be so confident. I thought of a fairy. A smile appeared on Yi Fuxian's face, closed his eyes, and felt the wind calmly. He and his entourage were very fast, crossing the city and coming to the East China Sea. The vast endless sea, the wind is stronger, there are ships sailing on the sea, they don't stop, and continue to walk all the way to Qingzhou City. After a few hours, in the East China Sea, an island city gradually appeared before the eyes. Yi Fuxian stood behind the monster and looked at the island city that was getting closer. I didn't expect to be back so soon, but it looks like a long time has passed. Brother Qin is okay. General Qin doesn't know if it's fine. Will Qingzhou girl miss me? Maybe. Yi Fuxian thought to himself, with a faint smile on his face. Finally, the beast flew into the sky of Qingzhou City, still did not stay, and headed straight for the Qingzhou Academy. Dong. At this time, a dull sound came from the ground. Yi Fuxian and others looked at each other, looked down, and saw that the earth seemed to be shaking, like an earthquake and tsunami. What is it? Zhao Xiang's eyes flashed, and the monster continued to move forward. After a while, there was another loud roar, and the earth shook again. The people in Qingzhou City are also rioting. Some strong people rise into the air, and weak people run outside, and their eyes are full of shock. Ouch! The vibration is still there, there is no regularity to follow, and as they move forward, the tremor is getting stronger and stronger. Even if the beast wave originally occurred, it is impossible to have such a strong wave in a faraway place, as it affects the entire island city. That is the direction of Qingzhou Academy. What happened? Yi Fuxian's heart trembled. Even though he didn't officially join Qingzhou Academy, he still had some emotions. He didn't want Qingzhou Academy to be destroyed. The speed of the monsters was getting faster, and they rushed forward. Before long, they arrived at where Qingzhou Zugong was. At this time, the area was shaking continuously and the building collapsed directly. Qingzhou Zugong's teachers and disciples looked at Tianyao Mountain, and their hearts trembled. On Tiantian Mountain, an unimaginable war erupted. That's Tianyao Mountain, senior of the snow ape. Yi Fuxian's face changed, and the source of the vibration was Tianyao Mountain, which could cause a strong sense of shock. There is only one possibility. Was the senior of the snow ape who fought against people. The realm of the predecessor of the snow ape was very unpredictable. Most likely he was following Yi Qingdai's whereabouts. He didn't know how strong he was, but the one who could fight him was definitely a terrible opponent. He was hardly worried. Someone came before us. Zhao Xiang also seemed to notice that a group of people were standing on the border of Qingzhou Zugong and Tianyao Mountain, and many people who had previously explored the road came and bowed. Zhao Xiang, something happened. Do you know who it is? Zhao Xiang asked. There can't be a strong person in Nandu country. Another person shook his head and groaned for a moment. You all stay here, I'll go in and take a look. Obviously, everything that was prepared in advance was useless. The plan was completely broken, and the super strong character got the news and came to Qingzhou City. Senior, can you take me with me? Yi Fuxian said. You're too weak, it will be dangerous. Zhao Xiangdao. No problem, I want to see, Yi Fuxian insisted. I really can't guarantee your safety. Zhao Xiang said again. Yi Fuxian nodded, and then the two of them headed for Chanyao Mountain together. When they entered Tianyao Mountain, the waves became more and more intense, and the monsters ran wild, as if they were crazy. The power of the left phase is very strong. Wherever he goes, the monster can't stop him. Finally, they came to the shock center area. When they saw the scene in front of them, even if they were as strong as the left phase, their hearts trembled violently and could not calm down. Senior. Yi Fuxian clenched his fists, his body trembled, his eyes lit up, and the blue tendons in his arms opened. In front of me, a huge snow ape is taller than a mountain, much bigger than Yi Fuxian when he first saw it, standing tall. His huge body stood in the endless storm, standing like a mountain, entangled with golden chains. The light on the chains seemed to be more attractive than the sun, and seemed to come from the sky, connecting with heaven and earth. The snow apes stretched out their hands, full of endless strength, but covered in blood, skin as white as snow, permeated with red liquid everywhere. He looked up and stared at the figure above the sky, as if he had an endless indomitableness. Yi Fuxian looked up at the sky, red in his eyes. In the sky, a row of silhouettes stood. These silhouettes stood in different directions, and they all shone incomparably brilliant. The light is like the armor of God, like the God of heaven. Above him, two figures stood still there. One of them, wearing Sharpie, is as dazzling as the 9-day goddess, noble and holy. He's not too old. Yi Fuxian probably felt a bit similar to himself. She was only a young girl, but her temperament was so extraordinary that she seemed to be born high above her. His gaze was so calm. Beside him stood a god-like figure. Light enveloped him, like someone protecting him. The girl he was with before Zhao Xiang was so far from this girl in terms of temperament and appearance. In fact, even if a fairy tale about a beautiful fairy appears here, I am afraid that it will not be able to cover the female light. Only the appearance may not be the same, but the noble temperament, Waji language cannot be compared. For example, if Wajiayu is compared to a fairy who came to Earth, then the woman in front of him is like a goddess who is above 9 days. The snow ape seemed to sense Yi Fuxian's arrival. His gaze glanced to this side. Maybe something was misunderstood. His blood-filled eyes showed a strong killing thought to the left. Roar. With a roar, the world seemed to freeze, and the whole world turned into a snow-white world, accompanied by the crisp sound of chains tilde tilde. The snow monkey's huge body came to the left side, raised the palm directly to the left. Zuoxian's face turned pale for a moment. He only felt that his body was frozen from the slight frost. Senior. Yi Fuxian blinked and stood in front of Zhao Xiang. He realized that Snow Monkey might have mistaken Zhao Xiang hugging him. The snow ape saw him slamming his palm in front of the two of them, and a loud sound was heard, and their bodies were shaken into the distance. The sound of the shackles came out again, and the ape's strong body was pulled back. Zun Zuoxiang and Yi Fuxian stood up, and at this time, the figure above the sky looked at them, only to hear a god-like figure coldly say, "Kneel." This voice is full of endless majesty, high above the earth, and not forever. Minister of the Southern Du Kingdom, have seen your predecessors, dare to ask them. Zhao Xiang arched and asked. The god-like figure above the sky looked down, and a cold voice came from his mouth, "My name is Donghuang." Dong. Zhao Xiang knelt down, worshipped the young girl above the sky, his body slightly trembling. Not only because of the other party's strength, but also the identity. His surname, Donghuang. Hexagram fulfilled. Zhao Xiang was trembling inside. The reason why he dared to come was to calculate the hexagram for himself. This journey will not be dangerous. Instead, he would meet people who had the number of kings. But he never dreamed that the life of the emperor was not the life of the emperor of Nandu. On the other hand, the Holy Land. Yi Fuxian did not kneel down. In the storm, the young man looked up at the sky and his body was straight. At this moment, he was very calm. The eyes and the girl looked away. This look, like the fate of fate. Chapter 70. Sky Strike 9 Strikes. Xi Fusion looked at the woman above the sky, and the other side was also looking at him. Donghuang. Xi Fusion even felt that this sentence was not spoken to Zhao Xiang, but rather to him. At this time, an endless ice storm swept over, and snowflakes flew from the sky to the earth, fell from the sky, and an incomparably cold chill came to this world. Everyone looked away, looked at the huge body that stood like a mountain, and saw the snow monkey looking up at the sky, and then, the sky froze, with him as the center, and the whole world was frozen and silent. Child, see clearly. A voice floated directly into Yi Fusion's ears, and then Yi Fusion saw the ghost on the body of the snow ape, and left the flesh directly. The endless ice and snow between heaven and earth gathered into a huge snow stick, which was covered with huge snow. The ape's body is held in the palm of the hand. 9 strikes in the sky. The body of the snow ape stands proudly in the sky, as if it is integrated with the heavens and the earth. At this moment, an incomparable momentum is gathering in the virtual shadow, and the body is extremely stable. Finally, the huge abyss of the snow apes moved, and at the first strike, they gathered in the sky and were infinity, crashing into the sky. The void seemed to be split open, and the frozen world was cut into 2 pieces. The endless storm blocked everyone's view, except for Yi Fusion. The snow ape did not attack the enemy, but taught him. The idea of great freedom is at work. Although Yi Fusion was sad, he understood that the snow monkey taught him with his life. This stick method seems to have evolved from the skills and techniques created by Yi Qingdai. Next, the snow ape himself demonstrated in front of him. After the first blow, the momentum did not decay, but on the contrary, it became stronger. When the snow stick danced again, it seemed that the heaven and earth potential hidden in the first shot was merged into the second shot, sweeping everything away. Then, the third and fourth attacks. The power of each attack seemed to double and become stronger. In the 8th strike, the sky shook, the mountains shook, the earth tore cracks, and the snow ape ghost was in that place. Become the most terrible storm in the world. 9th strike. Another voice entered Yi Fusion's ears. Then, he saw the snow monkey's body heading towards the sky, and the snow stick was swept away. At this moment, numerous stick figures appeared in the sky, leveling the sky. Then, Yi Fusion couldn't see anything. Above the sky, a dazzling gaze erupted and blocked everything. The entire Tianyao mountain shook, and the monster lay on the ground. An invisible force hit Zhao Xiang and Yi Fusion, knocking them both far away, but it seemed like a power that was protecting Yi Fusion, so that he was not seriously injured, but still suffered. Be patient. This storm lasted for a long time and finally subsided. Snow fell on Tianyao mountain, and vast white snow continued to fall. Yi Fusion stood in a daze for a while. Looking ahead, the ghost of the snow ape has disappeared. Only the rest, the big snow monkey, is standing there, but there is no life left, but his posture is still in the sky, and he is proud of the world. Strangled, and stood up. In the canyon behind him, the statue of Emperor Yi Qing is still intact. As if he is dead, he must guard the last statue of Emperor Yi Qing. Yi Fusion stretched out his hand, and a snowflake fell on his palm. Child, son, don't be sad. All of this is destined. I should have gone with my master. Just because I had to wait for someone, I am honored to have waited for you, but with a little regret, I can't see you in the world. It seemed that the last ray of will remained between heaven and earth, and it turned into a sound drifting into Yi Fusion's ears, leaving tears in the corners of Yi Fusion's eyes. Are these all decisive settings? Senior Snow Ape already knew the end, but he still took care of it. The gods in the sky were about to head towards the statue of Emperor Yi Qing, looking for something. However, they found nothing. A fiery light was released from the figure, and the girl in the void said, "Leave the last statue behind." The god of glory still turned his glory into a terrible light on the statue of Emperor Yi Qing, and directly raised it to the ground. The statue guarded by the snow ape, after all, fell. Your Highness Princess, you should have no mercy. God will gather light from her body and speak to the girl. The girl glanced at each other indifferently, then turned and walked around, and the group followed and walked away. When the girl left, she looked down and fell on Yi Fusion. Then he moved again, and the figure slowly disappeared into the sky. After they left, Yi Fusion's body fell. Although he had the strength to protect him before, the strong shock, even the left one, was injured, let alone him. Before that, he kept holding his breath. Stand by and watch it all happen. Zhao Xiang coughed up 2 bloods, and he couldn't calm down for a long time. What he experienced today cannot be described in words. In fact, he didn't see what just happened. How did the snow ape die? I walked to Yi Fusion's side and saw the young man's calm face. There was a hint of gratitude in his eyes. If he had not blocked himself earlier, he was afraid that the snow ape would really kill him. He felt the intent to kill. But, how could he be so calm in the face of all this when he was a teenager? And now, he wasn't even on his knees. The surname of the woman above the sky is Donghuang. Even the king of the Nandu kingdom had to kneel when he saw it. His identity was too far away, but the boy's figure was straight and loose. This is not a scary situation. Arrogance in the bones. At that moment, he even gave birth to an illusion, as if the boy in front of him should be as tall as the girl in the sky. Sun Zuoxian's eyes flashed, and then he was seen sitting next to Yi Fuxian. Behind him, a soul appeared, and it was a life cycle. Zhao Nandao Guo Zhao is a very rare astrologer. This is a secret that few people know because astrologers are always short-lived and they know too much. The light from the fatal plate enveloped Yi Fuxian's body, then, the gears on the fatal plate continued to move and accelerate. What happened? Zhao Xiang's face changed, and he looked at the unrestrained life plate in shock. The crazy rotation of the life plate continued to make a sound, and for a long time, it finally slowed down. Zhao Xiang's eyes stared at the natal chart, the pointer rotated, and finally, pointed to the top of the natal chart, as if pointing at the sky. Pooh! Zhao Xiang sat directly on the ground, looking at the front plate, his heart twitched violently. This is impossible. How is it possible? Shouldn't she be the girl in the sky? His surname is Dong Huang. Why did Yi Fuxian have such a fate? Then the hexagram shows whom people will meet. Sun Zuoxiang looked a little unbelievable, and continued to let go of fate. After repeated attempts, sweat dripped from his face, sitting next to Yi Fuxian, watching the teenager lying on the ground in a daze. Will Tao Nandu's number of lives be changed by this young man? Ah! When Yi Fuxian woke up, he saw Zhao Xiang sitting beside him and smiled at him. Get up. Senior. Yi Fuxian shouted, and his body sat up. You saved my life. You don't need to call your senior. If you don't mind, you can call Uncle Zhao. Zhao Xiang said with a smile, and he was embarrassed in his heart. I didn't realize it. Uncle Zhao. Yi Fuxian is unscrupulous, and his close relationship with Nandu Guazhou is good for returning to Donghai City. Zhao Xiang nodded and said, what about the injury? Not a big problem. Yi Fuxian turned his gaze, looking at the huge body like a statue, sadness in his heart. Uncle Zhao, I want to stay here for a while, you go back first. Yi Fuxian said, and Xiang Zhao shook his head and said, although the monsters have been driven away and left, perhaps they will return. It's too dangerous for you to stay. Let me accompany you. But, Yi Fuxian still wanted to say something, but saw Zhao Xiang looking at him and said, they all called Uncle Zhao, why do they still have to meet each other? Just do what you want, and I have to train here. Okay. Yi Fuxian nodded and said nothing. He stood up, walked towards the snow monkey's big body, and came to the snow monkey. He still maintained a standing posture, his eyes opened, and he looked down at the sky. Senior, I can't take revenge on you right now, just being here with you for a while. Yi Fuxian's voice was sad, and then he sat under the body of the snow ape. Can Sol appeared, and he came in front of him. Yi Fuxian was here. Playing the sound of the piano, a sad song came out, as if to say goodbye. After the song, Yi Fuxian started practicing again. The snow ape seniors taught him 9 strokes before he died. He trained in front of the snow ape to entertain the seniors of the snow ape. Time passed day by day, and without realizing it, months passed. 9 Tianxing's practice of 9 attacks is very difficult, and Yi Fuxian becomes the 3rd attack tilde Budao Shuwei and Master Shuwei enter the realm of 5-star glory. On this day, Yi Fuxian knelt before the snow monkey's huge body, bowed his head 3 times, then stood up and turned around without turning around. Uncle Zhao, let's go back. Yi Fuxian looked at Zhao Xiangdao with his eyes closed. Zhao Xiang opened his eyes and nodded, okay. He said he brought Yi Fuxian to fly in the sky and get out of Tianya Mountain. This Qian Yi Fuxian behaved abnormally, but he did not ask for anything. From Tianya Mountain, it is the edge of Qingzhou Zugong. Several people brought by the left phase are waiting here. They were relieved when they came back, and came to see him. Where is the princess? Zhao Xiang asked. Zhao Xiang is not out, the princess and all of them are temporarily staying in Qingzhou Zugong. Someone said, that girl is afraid that it will cause Qingzhou Zugong to cause big trouble again. Zhao Xiang faintly opened his mouth, then stepped out, and the group went towards Qingzhou Zugong. The girl in red is the princess of the Nandu kingdom, who now lives in the Budou Palace. At this time, there were many people in his residence. When Yi Fuxian entered, he saw Qin Yi and couldn't help but shout, Big brother! Fuxian! Qin Yi saw Yi Fuxian's surprise. I was trying to find you. Why is little brother here? Yi Fuxian asked. Qin Yi lowered his head slightly when he heard it. Teacher, you are back. The nephew here will not take care of anyone, and can finally come back. At this time, the girl came, and there were many martial arts figures beside her. When they saw Yi Fuxian, they all froze, but Yi Fuxian's eyes suddenly turned cold. Servant.